Tonight, Luke 7 and verse 37 or so. Let me see exactly where it begins. Verse 36. Luke 7, 36, the final incident in this 7th chapter of Luke. Jesus had healed the centurion's servant, and then he had raised the widow's son. So then there was a long discussion occasioned by some questions that were a question brought to him by John the Baptist's disciples. And after Jesus answered to their satisfaction and to give a resounding yes with all but saying yes to John, after sending them back on their way to deliver the answer, Jesus spoke about John the Baptist for some length. And so we had then Jesus complimenting John, the people rejoicing greatly at what Jesus had said about John, because they all had regarded him as a prophet, even though it says in the Gospel of John that Jesus did no miracles. Absolutely astounding work and effective work by John the Baptist, and I suppose of all the non-miracle working prophets, by far the greatest effect. But we found that many of the people who didn't like the gospel message that Jesus was preaching, they hadn't liked the gospel message that John was preaching either. So the last thing we talked about is that John had come and they had dismissed him as a nutter. They dismissed him as a radical. They dismissed him because he didn't eat normal food. He didn't drink normal things. He didn't it wasn't in normal society. So they said he was demon possessed. Then Jesus came, and he came doing all the things that John didn't do. And instead they called him a glutton and a drunkard, a friend of tax gatherers and sinners. And so, as we talked and closed last time, if you don't like that message, it doesn't really matter how it's delivered. And if you don't like the message, you will eventually find reasons to not like the messenger. Interestingly, they said John had a demon. By the end of Jesus' ministry, what's one of the things they're going to say regularly about Jesus? He's possessed too. And John didn't do any miracles, lived out there in the wilderness, did those weird things. He must have been demon possessed. Jesus did all these miracles, which we can't deny. So how did he do the miracles? Power of the demons. Yeah, he's by the power of Beelzebub. So evidently, if you oppose them bad enough, and if you oppose them long enough or hard enough, then I guess the final answer they always had was, well, that guy has a demon. John and Jesus must have been possessed by very different types of demons, it seems. In any case. Speaking of, then, that last thing that Jesus said, wisdom is vindicated by her children. So the fruit of wisdom is the vindication. Now we come to the final thing in John 7, the touching story of this sinful woman, and the way that when she comes up to Jesus, and she'd come with the intention of giving him honor, she is just obviously completely overwhelmed to the degree that she completely loses her composure and it makes a spectacle of herself, having not intended to. Then it appears she tried to make it better as far as the social aspect and the spectacle aspect, and proceeded only in making it worse. And just really, we can, through the pages of the inspired text, we can just see the sneers and the looks of disgust and the sideways glances on the part of all the Pharisees who would have been present for this. Yet we find Jesus receiving her and Jesus blessing her and telling her at the end she has been saved by faith. So let's read that. It's a bit of a reading, but I think we might just do well to read the whole thing, get it all in our mind at the same time. John 7:36, one of the Pharisees asked him to eat with him, and he went into the Pharisee's house and reclined at table. And behold, a woman of the city who was a sinner, when she learned that he was reclining at table in the Pharisee's house, brought an alabaster flask of ointment, and standing behind him at his feet, weeping, she began to wet his feet with her tears and wiped them with the hair of her head and kissed his feet and anointed them with the ointment. Now when the Pharisee who had invited him saw this, he said to himself, if this man were a prophet, he would have known who and what sort of woman this is who's touching him, for she's a sinner. And Jesus answering said to him, Simon, I have something to say to you. And he said, say it, teacher. A certain moneylender had 2 debtors. One owed 500 denarii, the other 50. And when he could not pay, he canceled the debt of both. Now which of them would love him more? Simon answered, the one, I suppose, of whom he canceled out the larger debt. And he said to him, you have judged rightly. Then turning to the woman, he said to Simon, do you see this woman? I entered your house and you gave me no water for my feet, but she has wet my feet with her tears and wiped them with her hair. You gave me no kiss, but from the time I came in, she's not ceased to kiss my feet. You did not anoint my head with oil, but she has anointed my feet with ointment. Therefore I tell you, her sins, which are many, are forgiven. For she loved much, but he who is forgiven little loves little. And he said, your sins are forgiven. And then those who were at the table with him began to say amongst themselves, who is this who even forgives sins? And he said to the woman, your faith has saved you. Go in peace. So we have this woman overcome entirely by her presence with Jesus, Jesus' kindness, that whatever he had expressed before, whatever kindness, goodness, and help he'd presented her, she thought that she ought to make some kind of return. And so she goes into this house where evidently a large number of people have gathered for this feast. Jesus there, having been invited, probably, this Pharisee here, where's it Jesus calls his name? Is it Simon, right? Or am I remembering that from another account? Yeah, verse 43, it mentions his name. So Simon answers. So Simon had brought Jesus in, but he had treated Jesus kind of shabbily, right? Why would you invite somebody in and then treat them shabby?
Maybe he thought, well, maybe they brought Christ there to make a spectacle of him.
I think so. Yeah.
It wasn't because they wanted to learn.
No, this was not a sincere offer of come enjoy my hospitality, let me be a good host to you. Let me enjoy your company and you enjoy my company. This appears to be something of which maybe they're going to put Jesus to the test. Maybe he did it out of just social obligation. He's a leading man. Here's Jesus is a prophet. We'll invite him over, but, we'll keep our distance. I guess we ought to invite him, right? Maybe it's that. Or maybe we'll invite him over and we'll give him the what for. We'll embarrass him. I don't know. But they treat him shabby. So there's some kind of spectacle or some kind of thing that they're going to get out of this aside from coming as truth seekers and something besides just being a good host. Something else. Some other kind of undercurrent was happening so that Jesus was sort of intentionally given a social snub. And so when Jesus was there, this woman shows. And again, I picture this as a large house with many people there, probably many attendants and many servants, because somehow this woman is able to get in and she's able to get to Jesus. We talked briefly, or mentioned it briefly on Sunday morning sermon, about the disciple whom Jesus loved. And the first time that shows up, the turn of phrase exactly shows up is when Jesus is at the Last Supper. And John described himself as a disciple who Jesus loves. And in the old translation it says was leaning on his breast, was leaning his head back against him. And we talked briefly about how the geography of that, how just the Jenga puzzle of people fit together. And what they did in the ancient time often when they were eating is they had these very low tables. I know we've all seen it's Rembrandt, right? Is it Rembrandt or Da Vinci? The Last Supper picture? It's one of the Da Vinci. We've all seen them, and it's kind of an odd table they're sitting at because they're all sitting on one side, right? And why are they all sitting on one side of the table in that famous painting? That's right. That's so you can see them all, right? That's so you can see them all. It's like in a TV show. It's very seldom when they show a TV show, people are really, face to face. But anyway, so they think you all get in the same picture. Anyway, it's a very odd arrangement. They're all sitting on one side of the table. Well, to our eyes, this would maybe be even odder. How are they sitting around the table?
Lounging like on small couches.
Yeah, they're not really sitting. They're more like lounging and sort of leaning on one arm with these low tables in front of them. And then they'd be kind of stacked in there sideways. And if you wanted to talk to the guy behind you, you sort of had to lean back and you would literally be touching him or right on the verge of touching him if you did. And that's where John was, right there in front, right there on the front side of Jesus. Well, here, that kind of thing explains how this woman is able to get to Jesus and come up to his feet. So she doesn't have to crawl under the table, does she? Because there's no table for her to crawl under. The table's in front of him, his feet are back behind him, and she comes up behind him, and she begins to, and she's brought this very costly ointment here. It says it's in an alabaster jar. And what do you know about any kind of perfume or ointment that's in an expensive jug? The stuff in it must be what? Quite expensive as well, right? There's one other occasion where we have a thing like that, where there's some really expensive perfume. And where's that? They brought some of those expensive things at the birth of Christ. I guess that is another one.
Preparing for his burial.
Yeah, I was thinking about preparing for his burial at Mary and Martha's house, right? And they bring out the costly stuff. And what does Judas say about it? Man, we could have sold that for a year's wages, right? And so and it was in alabaster. And so that's some expensive stuff. So she has brought some expensive stuff here. Don't know if she's brought the full-on year's salary worth of expensive stuff, but she has brought some high-end stuff, and it's obvious she intends to come and put that on his feet, right? And so when she does that, what happens to her? She's brought the alabaster flask, and then standing behind him, so that's how she can get, she's his feet are back behind. Standing behind him, weeping, she began to wet her feet with her tears and wipe them with her hair, kissed his feet, and anointed them with ointment. All right, now, does anybody think this is what she intended to do when she got there? Is this why she went? To go there, cry all over his feet, and wipe it up with her hair?
I imagine according to custom, it was true that his feet would have been washed.
Right.
So,
His feet would have been washed. She didn't come with soap.
cry because his feet were dirty. Oh,
Oh.
overcome with her emotions or spiritual faith.
Yeah, it seems pretty obvious that what she's come to do is you're right. The feet would have been washed. She would have definitely assumed that, because who wouldn't have had their feet washed? But she's brought ointment to put on his feet, right? So she's come to bring this nice stuff to put on his feet. And I think it's pretty obvious to me that's what the plan is. Her plan is to come in here and put that very nice stuff on his feet, do that. And again, this is a social custom that they had that we don't. Because when was the last time any of us had any plans that involved touching anybody else's feet? No, we have no plans. We have no plans in a social environment where that's going to happen, right? We just don't. So she is doing something though that is above and beyond. The normal would be wash the bowl to wash somebody's feet, and the person there who did the foot washing would then dry the feet. And so what is one thing is it turns out that's real quickly evident she kind of needs but doesn't have. She needs a towel. right? It turns out she obviously needs a towel. She doesn't have a towel. If you thought you were going to need to do something that needed a towel, what would you do? You take a towel. She doesn't have a towel, but she's got some really expensive ointment, some really expensive things, a luxury item to rub on the feet. So it's obvious she plans to come in here and put that on his feet, and that be what she. It's a wonderful gesture, and it's a lovely tribute, and it's real with this luxurious item. It's something that's costly. So it's planned, it's costly, it's honoring, it's a great thing. But when she gets there, and she's in the very presence of Jesus and touches Jesus, what happens? It gets her. She is totally overwhelmed and just begins to bawl her eyes out. Because she is with Jesus, she's in the presence of Jesus, and we don't know what kind of relationship, conversation, maybe it's just he had taught and the teaching of the gospel had so moved her and so changed her and been so beneficial to her. Or maybe they had conversation as Jesus converses with people constantly. Maybe there's been some other kind of thing that's happened. But whatever it has transpired before, she, recognizing her sin and recognizing in Jesus' forgiveness, is overwhelmed by the one who forgave her and has restored her back to God. She is so totally overwhelmed that now the tears begin to flow, and the tears wet her feet, his feet. So it's a lot of tears. It is a lot of tears, and it's like, oh no, what do we do now? So now we've made his feet wet, what do? You make something wet, what do? You dry it, right? And so what does she now have to dry his feet with? Her hair. And so I think as she starts that, it just even, snowballs more. So a period of just uncontrolled weeping, a period of trying to make it better, a period of wiping his feet with her hair. Now, in a few minutes, when this has run its course, a couple of things. Has anybody noticed this? It would have been, everybody would have known, right? Because how often do we ignore the balding woman in the middle of the room?
Well, if you've ever been in the Middle East, a woman with her hair exposed is just not something you see. And
right.
This would have been all different levels of unseen.
Yeah, and by now, whatever her hair would have looked like when she came in, what does it look like after the crying and the wiping with the hair? What does the hair look like? It is a fright, right? What would any mascara or makeup or any kind of treatment she'd done, what would that have been? That's a fright. So by the time she gets done with this, her appearance and her hair, this everything, every kind of decent thing and modest thing, as Matt brings up, it just would have been a shambles by now, right? And what does this room smell like now? This really costly perfume, right? And so, what does Jesus do through all of this? He accepts that honor, doesn't he? He accepts that honor. He doesn't shoo her away. He doesn't shame her in any way. Again, just think about the darts coming from the eyes of the Pharisees, their wives from the row behind, the servants. What do we do? Everybody, how do we get out of this? How do we move this along? And this going on. And then Jesus greatly contrasts that to what Simon did. Because Simon says in his heart, if he were a prophet, he would have known who or what this woman is touching him. She's a sinner. So Luke uses the word sinner about her. Simon uses the word sinner in his heart. Jesus talks about her being forgiven much. So we don't know what sin this woman was in, but was it well known? It was a sin of common knowledge, right? A sin of some kind of common knowledge. The obvious answer that many give is some sort prostitution, being a harlot or the like. That's as likely as any other sin that is commonly known. All right, so this is a woman who is commonly known as a sinner. Simon says in his heart, oh, come on. If he was a prophet, he would know what this person was. And he's implying, since he's a prophet, he wouldn't let that person, that sinful person, touch him. Of course, what's the very root of Phariseeism? It's from the definition of the word itself, right? A separatism, right? They're the segregated or the apart ones. And so would Simon let this woman touch his feet, you think? Oh, heaven forbid. And so he said this in his heart, and Jesus answers the question of his heart with the parable of the moneylenders. The two debtors, the 500 denarii debtor and the 50 denarii debtor. Now, as always, when doing things of ancient money to modern money, any kind of equivalent is extremely difficult. We know, though, that a denarii is about a day's wage. One is 50. So 50 days' wages, that's about 2 months' worth of work, right? And the other, if this is 2 months of work, then the other's 20 months of work. And so whatever you want to make the daily rate, if you want to convert it into actual dollars. But if one of them is 2 months worth of wages for the working man, and one of them is 20 months. One is exactly, we do know this relationship, because one's 500, one's 50. It's exactly 10 times different. Now, if somebody forgave you a debt of 2 months, all right, I don't know, are you a $2,000 a month guy? Are you a $4,000 a month guy? So somebody forgives you $2,000, $4,000, $8,000. How happy are you? I'm pretty happy. Matt, you want to forgive me $8,000? No. Okay. All right. Well, how about, what if it's, instead of 2, 4, or 8,000, what if it's 20,000, 40,000, or 80,000? All right, that's a different thing entirely, isn't it? And so one of them is, conceivable. The other's hardly even conceivable. So it's the massive debt is forgiven as well as the moderate debt. They're both debtors. And they both probably would struggle to pay. I don't know if 500 denarii, I don't know if you get that paid off. So he then says, who would love the one who forgave them more? Well, the one, Simon says, well, I guess the one who had the bigger debt canceled. And he says, you judge rightly. All right, so in this parable, of course, Simon is the 500 denarii, Simon is the 50 denarii debtor, and she is the 500. He's the 50, she's the 500. So she knows she's in sin, and she knows she's been forgiven, and she knows what a great blessing that was. Simon, the Pharisee, and other Pharisees, how much did they think they need to be forgiven of? A little to nothing, right?
Like the rich young ruler said, well, all these commandments, I've kept them since my youth. No problem.
Yeah, not a problem. Jesus in the Gospel of John, what does he say to the people when he said he's a physician come to heal? You don't think you need one, so you don't think you're sick. You don't think you need a physician, so you don't go. You don't get any healing. You're blind, but you don't think so. So your sin remains. So Simon here, let's just back a second. In regard to the sins that Jesus came to forgive, who needs that more? Simon or this woman? Who needs their sin forgiven more?
Well, after the encounter, after Jesus absolved her.
Yeah, well, when she leaves, she's already got that. But walking into the room this day, who needs their sins forgiven more? Does Simon need his sins forgiven more, or does the woman need her sins forgiven more? Yes. There's no difference, right? What does Simon need? He needs a sin forgiven by Jesus. What does this woman need? Same thing. Although I think by the way she's acting, I think there's some evidence that may have already, that may have already occurred, right? That she's reacting as one forgiven. But before Jesus came, but before Jesus entered the picture, they both would need equally their sins forgiven. And so in this story, though, of the parable of the big debtor and the small debtor, why is there a difference? Well, it seems to be really that one recognized. This woman, I guess if you counted up how many sinful acts she did, she might have done more than him, I guess. But really it's a matter of recognition, I think, rather than absolute who needs it more. And so she has been forgiven, and she knows it. She knows she needed it. She knows Jesus is the way, and she is so thankful she's come to do this act of service to put the ointment on his feet. Simon, though, we read now what he did. I entered your house and you gave me no water for my feet. All right, that's just rude, right? That's just rude. You don't, what? Somebody comes in off the street and you don't give them, water today. What it might be, wash your hands. Some basic social customs, take your shoes off, or the like. Why is it that in bigger houses there's always a bathroom right by the front door? So that when you come in, you can go to the bathroom if you need it. You can wash your hands if you need it. You can take care of those things, and there's one convenient right there. What if somebody came to your nice large house, you're having a large dinner party, and they start heading to the bathroom, and you go, I'm sorry, that's closed. That room's locked right now. Or that room's off limits.
Well, and it's locked to you specifically. Everybody else can.
Right. Now my friends are coming in and out, but you and your friends.
There's a strict no Jesus policy for that bathroom.
That's right. Well, how about that other bathroom? So that was locked. How about the one in the back? The servant's bathroom. Can I go back there? That's locked too. Thank you. Okay. So, can you imagine? Yeah. If I'm trying to think of a modern equivalent, and other than just locking the bathroom door, just for that group, Jesus party of 13, right? No bathroom access.
Whenever we adopt a meeting, then we don't have a potluck. Like typically, who is the first person we want to go to lunch?
Yeah, you normally you send the visiting preacher first, right?
You make him wait.
Yeah.
Show him that he's not welcome. That's supposed to.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think of something. So basically, like so no water for the feet. Again, this is it's just intentional rudeness. Because how hard would it be for Simon to say, servant girl, go take care of that, right? Because the servants probably had to be told not to do it, actually. All right, so didn't wash my feet, but she has wet my feet with her tears. So she came to put this ointment on my feet, and she came evidently assuming the feet would be clean. Again, bringing no towel, bringing no water, bringing nothing else. But then she's at Jesus' feet, and at some point she is totally overwhelmed by his presence. I hadn't thought about what Ben said earlier. Maybe she sees his feet are dirty, and she's offended by the insult to him. Who knows? But something just sets her off in a good way. That she is so overwhelmed in the presence of Jesus. She uses her tears for the water. She uses her hair for the towel. So in a house where no towel was offered, no water was offered, nothing was offered, here comes the lady with her own tears, her own hair, and an alabaster jug of ointment. And there's no comparison as to how Jesus is welcomed by these. You didn't kiss me. You didn't give me you didn't shake my hand when I walked in. And here she is kissing my feet. And so you didn't give me any oil for my head. Again, there's just like after you wash in the ancient world, a little bit of olive oil, which was rubbed on the hands and then rubbed on the face, is a refreshing thing. That was common. And so don't think about any kind of like special anointment or anything like that. Just think about, when you're done, after you towel off your face, you rub a little oil on your hands and you put that on your face to help your skin a little bit. And so every bit of social courtesy and custom has been intentionally denied Jesus, but this lady has made up for them in spades. It's something that, again, she obviously came unprepared to do the fullness of, but is so overwhelmed she can't help but do it.
So this plays right into the Catholic
Yeah, I'm not sure these are the same women myself, but
But there's the cap.
right. Yeah, it kind of conflates them into an additional female character. You flesh out the story, and you have more of a story. But yeah, so he says her sins are many. So Jesus said she has many sins, but they're forgiven. And notice that I'm not sure that's not a future tense. I'm not sure about all the verb tenses in the Greek there, but that's not something future. That's something that's already it's either has happened or is happening. That she's forgiven. She loves much because she's been forgiven much. So she is faithful and loving, and to Jesus she gives service. And regardless of the past, of whatever she did, which again is unnamed, I'm sure with the amount of detail in this story with Luke, Luke have probably listed the sins? Yeah, I'm sure. But he doesn't. But she is forgiven. The people there then complain. They begin to say to themselves, who is this that even forgives sins? Now, the other time this has come up in almost exactly the same context, in almost the same situation, is where Jesus forgave the man who was let down through the roof, right? There he worked a miracle to show he had power over the seen and then surely over the unseen. Here there's no miracle. It's just
Because it never says that Simon spoke the word.
Simon didn't move what?
It says it to himself.
Oh, okay. So yes, Jesus had, okay, yeah. Okay. Right. Jesus did have miraculous knowledge of Simon's heart. That's true at this place. And so they are also saying to themselves, who forgives sins? And so he just goes ahead and puts a point on it. He just goes ahead and shines the spotlight on that. Your faith has saved you. So she is saved by her faith. How is her faith shown? Well, in this case, by the love, by the service, by the obvious. This is obviously an act of gratitude, right? And so in this story, the way it ends with the woman and for the woman is how we'd hope it all ends up for us, right? Being forgiven of many sins, recognizing we've been forgiven of many sins, that we have this overwhelming gratitude to Jesus that at times might even overwhelm us and cause us to not worry about the social setting, that we're not afraid of our devotion and loyalty to Jesus to be shown, and then we get the blessing from him pronounced directly of forgiveness. Ben?
I would say that this testament to the Pharisees is their callous, blind look at themselves.
Yep.
They were rude to Christ by not offering away things to eat. They're rude by basically talking behind his back and guess it was there.
Right.
But Christ, knowing and perceiving all this, he doesn't, you do someone talking behind your back, I would probably say, what'd you say? He never.
Right. Well, and the other thing that's really unique, I think, in this, especially in the Middle Eastern culture, is there is no censure, there's no nothing toward the woman, right? There's nothing negative at all to her. Because with just a harsh look, a frown, a nod, Jesus could have just destroyed this whole thing for her, right? And he doesn't. He accepts it as it's offered. He doesn't, seem to, go out of his way to luxuriate in it, or does he demand other people from there on? I will need a crier to come take care of my feet when I come. No. This is a genuine act, a spontaneous act, but it's one that is fully accepted. And so this really should illustrate for us our relationship to Jesus. Unfortunately, that cold attitude toward other people, the putting people off if we think they're a sinner, putting people off like they put off Jesus because they didn't approve, that's too often how people interact with each other, right? Kind of an intentional coldness and distance. But
How many people in that town would have thought, well, it'd be nice to be invited to this guy's house? This day. And at the end of it, the person who did the great thing wasn't the person who had a nice house and nice food.
yeah,
The one who had nothing, basically, but gave it all to
Yeah, and again, we generally think she probably snuck in, right? You think Simon would have invited her? So, all right. Okay, so the woman who is forgiven, the woman who overflows with gratitude. And
It kind of reminds me of, we recently studied David when he was dancing before the ark and his wife Michal despised him. It's the same kind of outpouring, and Michal and the Pharisees' attitude is kind of similar, like this is unseemly, this is improper. And he was dancing for joy, and she was
Right.
weeping in repentance or perhaps joy at being forgiven, or we don't know exactly
Right.
what her emotional state, other than she was very upset. Just being overcome by emotion like that is kind of just not something we see a whole lot.
No, it's a really honest moment, isn't it?
Yeah.
It really is. And I know we need to answer our questions real quick, but I just think about Luke being told this story, probably by several people, because Luke says he went around and investigated. So whenever Luke got to this town, and he's, hey, tell me about Jesus when he was here. Oh, let me tell you about that time at Simon's house. And there's several mentions of Simon, including what Simon was thinking. And I do wonder if afterwards, as Luke is writing the gospel, is Simon one of the converts later who tells us on himself? We don't have to, it doesn't have to be, inspiration can reveal to us Simon's heart. We don't have to have Simon do it later. But yeah, I just think about how this story will be told, and when Luke comes around 30 years later? Yeah, right on 30 years later. And this story's still told, and Luke is given the information. Okay, so Jesus forgives sins even when the Pharisees were standing in the way. Questions real quick. Number one, why would the Jewish elders ask a favor for a Roman officer? Yeah, he had been extremely kind and generous to the people, even built their synagogue. Why? What are two reasons the centurion, or for what two reasons did the centurion say it was not necessary for Jesus to come to his house? That's missing a word there. What two reasons did he give for why it was not necessary to come?
He didn't think he was worthy.
I'm not worthy. That's one reason you don't need to come.
It's not necessary.
And it's not necessary. Whether you speak from near, or speak from afar, it's the same. Why does it say Jesus healed the widow's son? It specifically says from compassion. It doesn't say that all the time about miracles, but that is there's a compassion aspect to nearly all miracles. What was the reaction of the people to the raising? Yeah, they rejoiced greatly and knew that God had sent a visitation to them. What did John send his disciples to ask?
Are you the one that cometh, or do we need to look for another?
Right, you the one or somebody else? And who had acknowledged what God had said and been baptized by John? And who had rejected God's purpose and John's baptism? Christ acknowledged it. And the people acknowledged, and they had been baptized. Who had rejected? The scribes and Pharisees. All right, then. Why did the Pharisees not like the woman anointing Jesus' feet?
Yucky sinner.
Yeah, yucky sinner. Terrible lady. What else did the Pharisees object to? Everything. Yeah, particularly him forgiving sins. They didn't like that. Of course, what did Jesus keep on doing? Healing people, forgiving sins. Thank the Lord he did.